Hello, and welcome to another episode of Accept, Then Achieve. Today, I'm so honored to have Catherine with us as an honored guest.
Hello, everybody. I'm so honored to be here. Let's dive in. Great topic.
Yes. Would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name is Catherine LifeDesign. I go by LifeDesign. Yes, that is a stage name because I've published a couple of books and and I've always been craving to design and create my own life because when I was young, I was suffering a lot from emotional and narcissistic abuse, and I wasn't free who I really was to be who I really was. So I think that made me a little bit obsessed with later on creating my life, designing who I want to be and how I want to live my life. So in so many respects, that has become who I am, and that's why I go by that name. And we'll dive into that a little bit later. But I had dream life, dream business, dream partner, lived on my dream island in the Mediterranean. And then I became very ill. Everybody keeps saying nowadays, like, everything was perfect. Like, how did you get so ill? That's a very good question. And luckily, I pretty much know the answer now. But after 3 years of hell, chronic illness, lots of different symptoms. I mean, by the end of it, I had like 30 plus symptoms. I had over 30 symptoms and diagnoses that I was going through. And it was a living hell. I did not think I was going to survive. And then I found the right tools for me. I mean, healing is a very individual journey. I found the right tools for me and I healed within 4 months. And that was, to me, that was worth shouting from the rooftops. The things I realized later that for me that like I talk to anybody who listens because was the most healing and wholesome experience I've ever gone through. So yeah, I can share later what that was, of course. That's me in a nutshell, I would say.
Wow. I have so many questions I kind of wanted to ask. What was that about? But please tell us, like, what was the cause of all the chronic illnesses? I mean, oh my gosh, 30 things or 30 symptoms.
Yeah, you wouldn't think that these were connected, but they were. So I was suffering from autoimmune disease, Hashimoto's, which is, every other person tells me, oh, I've got Hashimoto's, and the Western medical staff, they just literally, oh, here's a pill, take that for the rest of your life. L-thyroxine, whatever you pronounce it in English. Sorry, because I spoke to a lot of German doctors. I have Austrian roots and grew up in the UK. But anyway, so that was almost like a sudden diagnosis. I didn't feel bad. I did not feel ill. And the doctor was like, oh, you've got Hashimoto's. I'm like, nah, I don't. I didn't actually believe it
Hmm.
because like, no, I'm fine, and then it started progressing pretty much. I was like, I then had a couple of miscarriages, so my hormonal balance was completely out of whack. I then, what else? Oh my goodness, what was next? Then I started to have emotional issues, anxiety, my first anxiety and my first panic attacks. Then it continued with chronic fatigue syndrome, God, inflammation in the whole body, food intolerances, leaky gut, problems with the pancreas, hormonal problem, increasing hormonal problems as well. Depression, after a couple of years of this and being bedridden partially, you're not the most optimistic person anymore. I had so much fatigue and nausea and whatnot. So it continued down to depression. So there came a point where my body was just bedridden, my mind was just so hopeless, and emotionally I was all over the place. I then there was, of course, there was medication I was taking, and then medication that was, again, you said, oh no, let's not take that anymore. So that had an effect, withdrawal and testing all these things out. And I mean, one doctor almost cost me my life because they changed my medication so quickly that I went into I didn't recognize myself anymore. I got into like anger bursts, and I was completely like, I felt like I was going crazy, and I almost killed myself because of the change of medication just wasn't handled very well. And it wasn't like I didn't want to kill myself. It was more like I didn't know how to live anymore. This had gone on for, years by then. And I was like, I don't think this is a life worth living. I'm in constant chronic pain, like back pain, neck pain.
Mhm.
Yeah, God, it was horrible. I mean, you can hear that probably when you hear all those symptoms, but
Yeah.
I did not think they were in any way connected because obviously, if you have depression, you go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist.
Mhm.
If you have neck and back pain, you go to, a chiropractor or a physiotherapist or something.
Mhm.
Um, if you have, I also had like a chronic Epstein-Barr virus. If you have
Mhm.
troubles with your thyroid, like Hashimoto's is, then you go to a specialty doctor, and they treat whatever they've only been trained to treat whatever is in front of them, like the symptom that is in front of them. I'm sure you
Mhm.
know this
Their
best than
specialty,
anybody.
yes. Yes.
And I understand there is no time. Like usually, I heard Tony Robbins say that medical information is kind of outdated 18 months later. So
Mhm.
I totally understand that doctors do not have the time to keep completely up to date with everything, or don't have the time to actually listen to the patient's other, 28 symptoms. So, but these things were connected. And actually, I can just share what it was because
Yeah, the root cause.
um what controls all these body functions? What controls if we digest right? What controls if we have anxiety, if we have long COVID, if we have autoimmune disease? These are systemic diseases from my point of view. And I'm not a doctor, but I'm a survivor in that sense.
Mhm.
Um, and then I heard for the very first time about brain retraining
Mhm.
and nervous system regulation. And that's the common thread because all these autonomous bodily functions and mental functions, they are controlled by the nervous system. And who controls the nervous system? The limbic brain.
Mhm.
So it's like the limbic system um, obviously sends signals to the nervous system how to respond physically. But I really had to realize that I was stuck in a chronic fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. I was stuck in chronic stress.
Mhm.
And I still hate to say chronic stress because I did not feel stressed. It wasn't like, oh, I'm so stressed. Of course I'm, getting ill. It
Mhm.
wasn't like that at all. I was happy. I was living my life. But looking back, of course, now I can connect the dots.
Mhm.
Of course, things popped up like, yeah, I did have childhood trauma. I did have, I was diagnosed with complex CPTSD, complex
Mhm.
trauma, developmental trauma. Um, so yeah, there were these things. And when we experience trauma, especially in our childhood, the limbic system, takes the clues from that. It went into state of complete overwhelm and went
Mhm.
into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And sometimes these patterns, if it was a very emotional overwhelm, if it was complete overwhelm, these things imprint, and the limbic system basically runs these patterns and these coping mechanisms if there's just the slightest resemblance of that occasion of what we experienced when we were little and when it was life threatening, we
Mhm.
thought at least. So I was still, 20, 30 years on, I was still running nervous system patterns that were not serving me anymore, that developed when I was 13 or 10 or whatever. So yeah, that was my realization. And if I may share one more realization that kind of changed the way I saw things,
Mhm.
because there was one sentence: when we are in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, when we are in a stress response,
Mhm.
we do not digest. There is no digestion, there's no immune system, there's no hormonal system. I mean, yeah, they exist, but
Mhm.
the body takes all the energy from all non-essential systems and plugs it into the fight flight response. Of course, because we are getting ready to run away, we're getting ready to fight. So the body mobilizes all that energy into that stress response.
Mhm.
And the problem is we just sit there usually on the couch, and maybe we go into fight flight because a colleague said something silly, we're being
Mhm.
bullied or whatever. So there's no physical, we don't run it off. Like we have this whole hormonal reaction of cortisol, adrenaline, and all those things.
Mhm.
And Yeah, and this has really clicked for me. When I'm in a stress response, my body shuts down the immune system to a completely essential level. My body does not digest because first we need to survive the fight, and then we can look into taking up nutrients for, for beautiful hair, which is completely non-essential at that point when we're trying to fight something. So we do not digest in the chronic flight, freeze, or fawn response. That was like, yes, that's why it's such a great base for all these other illnesses and diseases to take hold.
Hmm.
So, for example, if we're in a chronic fight flight response and we have a virus or something, you have COVID, we have whatever, Epstein-Barr, then yeah, that can really get to us because our immune system is at such a low level. So, and if you're at that level for a couple of years, of course your systems are starting to break down. Of course your system's not producing testosterone or progesterone anymore for fertility,
Hmm.
It thinks we constantly in survival. Sorry, that was a very long reply to your answer, but that's pretty much it in a nutshell, yeah.
No worries. Thank you for sharing in such detail. And yes, it is so fascinating how we are all one giant nervous system. Like that's the root that connects everything in our bodies. And yeah, and even you had mentioned miscarriages, infertility. It's like our bodies are like, yeah, there's no time to reproduce. There's no time to rest or eat or whatever. We just gotta. And I also had am recovering from chronic PTSD too, and I just know how it feels. Like some days I, even if I didn't do a whole lot of something, it still felt like a battle some days, or like one small thing, one small criticism, one small look from someone can totally set off the stress response. So I totally feel that. And so
Yeah.
now I'm just really curious. So how do you regulate your nervous system, and how did you
Hmm.
recover in 4 months is miraculous. So want to hear all about that for the audience, and also to share any practical tools or
Yeah.
tips or exercises that they can try right away after this episode would be awesome.
Absolutely. I mean, nervous system regulation is all about, first of all, recognizing, oh shit, I'm having a response. So what is that? Is it tightening of the throat? Is it oh my God, did he really just say that? Like being scared, not feeling safe.
Yeah.
And feeling safe is such a tricky thing to identify because I did not run around thinking, oh, I don't feel safe. I don't feel safe. I felt safe, but only on the surface. Is your
Mhm.
your inner child, your whatever. Some people probably, if you've talked about a lot about inner child, some people are like, oh, I can't hear about that anymore. But it's true. Like, do we at the core feel safe? Are we in rest and digest? And this is what nervous system regulation is about. You realize much quicker, you become more aware. That's the very first step. You become aware when you're having a kind of response, and even if that's just like tightening of the stomach, tightening of the neck, or I noticed it, for example, I had to start to cough a lot when I was consuming certain foods. So my body, the amygdala, interpreted that as danger, and the amygdala is our kind of threat center. It constantly asks, like, are we safe? Are we not? Are we safe? Like, this is the only job, or one of the only jobs the amygdala has. So you notice, am I having a reaction? Do I feel free, social, ready to connect, safe to be myself, all those things.
Mhm.
Once you notice you're having a reaction, you actually go into um you start regulating your nervous system by creating more capacity, and that is something very physical. Like I did that with somatic movement, for example. It's basically nervous system regulation is all about shifting, recognizing, and then shifting into rest and digest as
Mhm.
quickly as possible again. So you do not live in fight flight. It's no problem. Sometimes we go into flight mode, we go into fight mode, whatever.
Mhm.
Fawn, by the way, because I've mentioned it a couple of times,
Yes.
fawn is a kind of people pleasing coping mechanism. So freeze kind of immobilizes you, and I think fight flight, most people can think, yeah, can guess what that means. But so rest and digest is the opposite, the parasympathetic state. And that is what you train with nervous system regulation, to return to rest and digest as quickly as you can. And the easiest way to do that is physically, with the body. So one exercise I love is training the vagus nerve, and the vagus nerve runs through, for example, our neck, but it's basically connected to all the other organs. And if the sympathetic nervous system is the gas pedal, the parasympathetic is kind of the brake. So yeah, sorry, I'm just very briefly
Love
explain
that.
trying to
Thank you
explain
for
that.
explaining.
And the parasympathetic is controlled by the vagus nerve, and it runs, for example, through our throat. And so one very easy way to calm down is to simply go something like that, woo-omming, that's what I call it. And you might think now, how is that going to help me? That does not sound like something that's life-changing until you try it out. I recently had a client on a Zoom call and a group call, and we all woo-ommed 3 minutes together. And she was like, yeah, I'd always heard this, but I've never tried it. It just feels silly. I don't want to do it. And then we did. And she's like, oh my goodness, I do feel different. I do feel calm. That's because you cannot change physiology. If you are active, if you activate the vagus nerve, then more calm, you will be more calm. There's almost no way around it. You can go back into fight flight immediately after, but it's actually very calming. It's so interesting because in the last 50 years, 100 years, or whatever, we used to go to church, or and sing, for example, on a Sunday, and that's very regulating. Or if you're a Buddhist, then obviously these kind of sounds, they're so calming. And I mean, that's just one exercise. We do. I had to learn a whole lot, and this is what I also teach my clients. We learn a whole range, because some exercises you'll love, some you'll hate, and some you'll be like, oh, that doesn't work for me. That's fine. It's very individual. Another thing is like shaking, just like shaking your body, for example. And you see this with animals, like if the gazelle gets chased by a lion,
Mhm.
and
Oh,
it
that.
survives, it gets away, it almost shakes off the chase by shaking. And that's the telltale for the brain. We are safe again. Shaking, hugging, co-regulating with others, those are all clues and signals to the limbic brain to stop the fight flight response and go back into rest and digest.
I love
That's nervous system regulation for you. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Oh, I had a question with the Vu. Does it matter then what exactly we sing or say? Just
No,
using your
you can
throat.
do whatever feels great. I mean, it's good if it's a continuous, like, continuous sound, but it could be anything really. I like to mix it up with woo and om a little bit. I really enjoy that, but try it out. Um, it's not always the right tool. Like if you're really, really upset and you're angry and you're in proper fight mode, sitting there going woo-omming isn't gonna help. I always wondered, I was like, when I was proper angry, I tried to meditate, which is probably the most stupid thing to calm down a fight response. So if you've tried meditation and it hasn't worked for you, you may have tried it at the wrong point in time, because if I'm in fight response, I'm frustrated, I'm angry, next time you are, sense into your body how much energy is being mobilized. Like there's so much force in that. So by sitting on the couch, we are not using that energy. So first of all, especially with a fight response, somatic movement, I would jump, like, or do jumping jacks or something like that to get the energy out there. So to actually use what our body is mobilizing for us. I mean, it's a great response. It's a great mechanism. So yeah, there's different tools for different moments, and that's something you learn with somatic movement and vagus nerve training. You see what works in that moment.
That's wonderful, and that's a great point. Yeah, it's different strategies for different responses. What would you recommend for the fawn response? Because I know we have a lot of fawners, people pleasers on this
Yeah,
podcast
great
audience.
question. So fawn can be. also, like, most of the time you have a little bit of crossovers. Like, fawn can also be very immobilizing sometimes. Like, we feel like, okay, we need to please that person now, and we sort of tense up. We get tense. We try to say the right things to
Mhm.
win over their, their worthiness or whatever, so they view us favorably again. So it can be a bit of immobilization, but also there's a huge element of not feeling safe. If
Mhm.
that person does not like me, if that person doesn't help me or whatever, I don't feel safe. That's pretty much the inner state we are in.
Mhm.
So what I would do is, first of all, I would try and remove myself from that situation if I can. It's not always possible. That also signals to our limbic brain, I'm showing up for myself. I'm
Mhm.
taking care of us, body, mind.
Yes.
So that's the first thing. And what I usually do with I haven't had a phone response for so long, so I actually have to think back quite far. Um, so then it could be something like a self hug. It
Mhm.
could be a physical touch. Just physical touch sometimes is enough. So, for example, this is a good example. If you are in a restaurant and somebody keeps saying stupid things to you, and you're having dinner with that person or whatever,
Mhm.
it's very hard for us to remove ourselves from that situation sometimes. So what I sometimes start doing is I use my hands and I put them on my thighs, I put them on my legs, and just start touching and grounding and realizing I am here in this very moment. um I can feel myself. I'm showing up for myself. So with fawning, there's a lot of grounding. I think grounding is a very good way to get out of that. But again, it's something we have to play with and see what works for us.
Mhm.
But grounding basically gives us a sense of, okay, I'm sitting on this couch or on this chair. I am actually safe. But what this person is saying doesn't feel safe. So yeah, I would go with physical touch a lot. Remove yourself from the situation if you can. Take some deep breaths. Breath work might also be a good example for that. That kind of thing. Slowly mobilizing, maybe even standing up, walking a little bit. Those are all great responses. I think you could try out.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for all the tips. Yeah, I feel like the fawn response is you lose yourself. You totally abandon and lose yourself in someone else. You're only thinking about them. So by grounding and reminding, hey, I'm here for me, you build
Mhm.
that self-trust in and that inner safety. So thank you for that.
Beautifully said.
I
Yeah.
really love that.
I'm glad you mentioned that, the self-abandonment. That's also very, very important. So I really had to train myself out of that. And that was hard. I mean, we
Mhm.
tend to, especially if we've gone through trauma, that is one of the hardest things to overcome with CPTSD, is not self-abandoning anymore.
Yes.
um what helped me a lot with that was brain retraining. You basically start to, it's a neuroplasticity exercise. Neuroplasticity is, our brain can learn until we, I don't know, 90 or whatever. Previously we always thought that our brain is fully formed and educated, I mean, when we're kids, but we found that out later that the neuroplasticity goes all the way until we're old. So our brain can
Amazing.
always learn new connections. I love that, and I see you do too. um, so you can think of it as, our brain loves to use highways. It
Mhm.
uses connections that it's used for years because they are efficient. It doesn't take much energy to brush your teeth. It's so simple. You've done it a million times. So what we do with brain retraining, we basically stop. We start blocking that well-traveled connection,
Mhm.
and we start building a new connection. That takes time. That takes a couple of months at least, usually,
Mhm.
especially with deeply ingrained patterns. That could take, like, I'm still practicing some things, but it takes years sometimes. So what you can do is, when you realize you're self-abandoning, or if there's some way of thinking that's not helping anymore, first of all, you can start with a simple stop, stop, stop. This is not serving me. Just by recognizing it, you're already giving your brain a little bit something to work with, like, oh, are we going to do something different today or what? That's it's
Mhm.
you train how your limbic system reacts in the future. So you might have a pattern of people pleasing, um, but you can train that out of yourself, because if you realize, because we are adults, at 8 it was so important. We depended on our parents for survival, for their love, for their care. So of course, that was critical to our survival. At 42 or 65, it's not. If somebody says, "Oh, you green-eyed monster," like, well, I don't really care. This person on the internet just called me something, but so we have to kind of reparent our nervous system
Hmm.
and teach our brains, because they run this shit until, I'm sorry, they run this until we 80, until we 90. It doesn't matter. They will
Yes.
continue running these limbic systems, limbic coping patterns. But we can reparent our nervous system to respond differently thanks to neuroplasticity. Yeah.
That's amazing. So you mentioned how to stop the old unhelpful pattern. How do you really shift onto that newer one? Do affirmations actually work? Because they sometimes feel hokey and silly to me.
Mm-hmm.
Or is it truly just repetition, repetition? Keep doing
Mm-mm.
it, one day it'll sink in.
This particular method is not done through affirmations. It's done through creating, like stopping one response by, stopping it, sometimes analyzing it a little bit to understand where it comes from. It also involves something called parts work. So we work with our childish part, childish, that sounds negative, our hurt parts, that the ones that don't know how to trust people anymore, the ones that have been hurt a lot. So
Mhm.
we can sort of look into, we can analyze and hold space for our different parts, because we are always, it sounds a bit, no, what's the word, not bipolar, but it's like
Schizophrenic,
we always
multiple
made up of,
personality.
yeah, made up of many elements, like but we also have our adult main personality guiding us, the adult that knows this is safe. So you then go into a little bit of parts work, and at the end you almost add a little cream on top by creating very positive emotions.
Mhm.
That can be done through visualization, for example. That's one way to do it. It's a bit more complex to be able to explain it on the show now, but you have to continually do that. Basically, you stop the process, the old one. You look into and hold space for your wounded parts, and you add something very positive towards the end. And I do a brain retraining round, and I'm like, I might have been crying and like really hurt before I finish with my brain retraining round. I feel like I'm on top of the world sometimes. It's massively powerful. It's really powerful.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing all these nuggets of wisdom. To shift gears a bit, you mentioned that you had a difficult childhood as well. Are you still in touch with your family in any capacity, or you're like, nope, boundaries, or yeah, just curious how that's going?
I love that question because it's so current. I had a phone call yesterday without, I'm gonna share everything. Like I don't mind being vulnerable here, but I had a phone call from a family member yesterday that went horribly wrong. Not horribly wrong, it was just horrible. Let's leave it at that. But so the emotional and narcissistic abuse was kind of perpetrated by my stepfather, but my mother was the enabler in the whole scenario. And I moved out when I was 14, because otherwise I would not have survived. So again, that was I was so stuck and repressed and whatnot. So many things. Moved out when I was 14, didn't have contact with my mother for 5 years.
Mm,
Then my mother finally left this person and we reconnected.
mhm,
And everything was fine. Everything was, I don't know, I never acknowledged that I had trauma. I was like, yeah, it was a bit difficult. Not a bit difficult, it was
mhm,
stupidly difficult. But I felt like, everybody has got the baggage. I moved in with my grandparents, so they didn't see the need to get me any therapy or anything like that, even though I had like a circular hair loss at 15 and 16. I was like losing hair by the dozen, but nobody, those were the times. Nobody thought, oh, maybe we should look into therapy, for her. Just that just did not occur to anybody.
Mhm.
So I think that's why, fast forward 20 years, I did have an okay relationship with my mother, but it was never very trusting from my side. I think I mistrusted her. She wanted to make up and she wanted to mend the fence, and I was always a bit like holding back, and I didn't know why. So fast forward 20 years, I got pregnant, had a horrible pregnancy, and again a miscarriage in early pregnancy. But there were a couple of weeks where I was bedridden, so nauseous, so fatigued and exhausted. I mean, pregnancies can be hard either way, but I
Mhm.
was in deep depression and bedridden. And so that was a horrible experience. And I was just lying there feeling like dying. And I felt so helpless. And it's so curious to think now, because I think in that moment that triggered my old childhood trauma, like
Mhm.
feeling trapped, not being able to get out, like not being completely helpless. Those things triggered my trauma
Mhm.
from 20 years ago. So for me, my whole CPTSD and my whole childhood trauma really only emerged at like 38 or 39 years of age. So 20 years, 25 years later, really,
Mhm.
is when I started then go to EMDR therapy and things like that. I was hospitalized for I was in hospital for a month because, again, with all my physical symptoms adding to it, I couldn't look after myself anymore and things like that. So to answer your question, I am right now, I'm not so much in touch with them.
Mhm.
I live, there's a reason why I live 2,000 kilometers away from them. Um, is there is always a desire to love your family. I
Mhm.
didn't want to leave my mother at 14. So I think there is a desire, and that's something to sometimes that's hard to navigate. Um, and when I have those calls like I had yesterday, it's just so sad. So it makes me sad, but I have so much capacity in my nervous system that I can really hold the space for me. I'm like, I know who I am. I know I'm a wonderful human being. I know I'm not at fault here. I know I'm allowed to be happy. I'm allowed to be who I am. I'm allowed to express myself fearlessly. So, as tricky as it is to navigate, I know who I am. And I think that's what I finally learned from my journey through chronic illness and therapy and all those things. So, yeah, maybe we'll be in touch a little bit more. Sometimes it's more difficult than other times. So, yeah, it's a bit
Wow.
of an ambivalent
Yes.
reply.
Thank you so much for sharing. Me too. Me too.
Mhm.
It was more my mother was the main narcissist, and
Mhm.
dad was the enabler. And so it's very tricky because I do love them so much and grateful for all of their sacrifices and everything they've done for me. And
Yeah.
it's just this, yeah, the ambivalence is the exact right word, just the conflict because you know that when you do go there and you get hurt, and some old wounds may reopen if you be in contact, but and sometimes it may not. Like this time coming back to visit, I'm with them now. I'm like, oh, I feel so much stronger. I feel like I can have built this shield that works for me. And yeah, staying very solid in who we are, not abandoning ourselves. And yeah, and feeling so proud of ourselves too. Like we're allowed to be happy. We're allowed to be exactly who we are. And this leads me to my next question on just the whole theme of this podcast, accepting yourself no matter where you are, who you are. Yeah, what resonates with you in our message and what inspired you to want to come be a guest here?
Yeah, like I was saying, so first of all, I see you, I feel you. It's so important to acknowledge what we've gone through, and the now navigating these things is I mean, that's huge that you're with your parents right now. That's I think that's amazing. For sometimes we take little steps, sometimes we take 5 steps back, but I think this journey of I always call it creating capacity within ourselves to feel all ranges of emotions, from feeling hopeless, from feeling hurt, from being happy. We are capable of all these emotions, and it's okay to create space for all of them, and also acknowledge when we sit with our parents, for example, say, "Whew, this is getting a bit too much now." So again, I would start with the body touching just to ground myself a bit, or recognizing I'm going to remove myself from I'm going to withdraw from the table and just take 5 minutes in my guest room or whatever to calm down, breathe, whatever. So that's so important. What you're doing is amazing. Yeah. And what made me want to come on, yeah, for sure. I mean, like I was saying at the very beginning, I will shout this message and nervous system regulation, brain retraining, adult main personality training, which is kind of reparenting your nervous system,
Hmm.
EMDR therapy, and the fifth thing I credit with my healing is weight training. I know it's weird, but
Interesting.
weight training, also things like cold exposure, sauna, like things like that have helped me physically get stronger.
Mhm.
But yeah, these five things. And I mean, I owed him my life. I really have to say that. And it makes me well up a little bit even. But I will shout them from the rooftops because I literally think they're so easy. We should learn them at school. We should learn nervous system regulation at school, because you do need a healthy nervous system to
Mhm.
heal anything, like whether you have cancer or whether you have a virus infection, the cause might be different. But in order to heal, you'll always need the ability to move into rest and digest so the body can do its job, so the body can focus on the immune system, can strengthen your digestion, all these things. So yeah, I just literally I want to share them. I want to help whoever I can. And yeah, like I said, I will shout it from the rooftops till I die, probably.
Yes, well, and how amazing. So would you say that you no longer have the chronic pain symptoms or not at all? Wow.
Not at
So it's not
all.
even
Not
that
at
you have
all.
to manage them. It's just wow. That's amazing. That's really inspiring that healing is possible from
Yeah.
that low point to yeah, where you are now. Of
Yep.
all those modalities, it sounds overwhelming and like a lot. What would you think recommend was the most effective maybe? Or if an audience member could only start with one, what would you
Yeah.
recommend?
I think first of all, I would start with nervous system regulation and create capacity. So this is a step-by-step process, and I've actually put it in a program together. So I've created a program where we follow all these steps to find your own modality of healing. If you've experienced any of these symptoms, I know people who've had Lyme disease and POTS. Who
Hmm.
I know one lady, she's had what's it called? Borreliosis, I think. Yeah, so
Oh,
Lyme
wow.
borreliosis.
Yeah.
And she didn't walk for like barely walk. I think she could walk a little bit, but this went on for 15 years. She was 15 years. And then she started brain retraining and nervous system regulation, and within half a year, she could walk again. I mean, I'm not kidding.
Wow.
It's amazing what our body is able to heal if it's not stuck in chronic fight flight response. So
Right.
start with nervous system regulation to create capacity, um, even for pain, even for your symptoms. But usually, when we navigate out of fight flight, then the body starts to heal itself pretty quickly. It's
Hmm.
yeah. And for all my autoimmune Hashimoto people, fellow sufferers, my autoimmune process stopped. I no longer have antibodies, like no longer have thyroid antibodies. They halved every 3 months. I had about half the value until it reached zero.
Wow.
I'm still taking thyroid medication, but a colleague of mine, she even managed to increase the volume of her thyroid again. So, yeah, this is
Wow.
amazing. And she took 2-3 years to slowly reduce the medication until after 2 years, she no longer had to take it and had beautiful thyroid values, so like blood values. And so that's going to be my next step. So I'm still taking medication. I'm symptom free from over 30 diagnoses and symptoms. I no longer have chronic neck and back pain, inflammation, all these things. So they're all gone, which is pretty amazing. Yeah.
Wow. Yes, it is. I believe in all those success stories, people recovering from terminal cancer even. It's truly amazing. I think,
Mm.
yeah, when we're in chronic fight or flight, it's like our life's energy is leaking. It's used just to manage that. And then when we take that away, then it can be used on so many other parts. Wow. Thank you.
exactly, exactly.
Um, I know we
And
only have a few minutes left, so I guess I
yeah,
just wanted to say, well, first off, how can people find you and connect with you and chat more with you and maybe work with you and
yeah.
find your work? And then just any other last thoughts or messages you wanted to say to the audience, or biggest, you've shared so much great tips and advice and everything. So just any closing thoughts for us.
Thank you. So beautiful. Yeah, if you want to connect and continue the conversation, then you can find me on Instagram, Catherine Life Design, and also my website, catherinelifedesign.com. On my website, it's catherinelifedesign.com slash nervous system test. And there's always hyphens in there, like nervous hyphen system hyphen test. Maybe we can include it in the show notes. That was my first step. Take the nervous system test. Find out what level of dysregulation you have, if that is something that can really and truly help you. So yeah, definitely take the nervous system test. It's a very easy quiz to just go through and answer a couple of questions to see if you are very likely to be dysregulated. That is the first step. And then you can start with nervous system regulation and things like that. So that's the easiest way. Also Facebook, Catherine Life Design everywhere. I'm Catherine Life Design everywhere. But yeah, that's it. I'd love to hear from you and hear your story as well. There's so many healing stories I know now, and see if I can help you, of course. And final words of wisdom. That's a good question. Let's see. When you hear healing stories like mine, it does sound easy, and it is to a certain degree. But I also want to make you aware that first, to start with, healing is totally possible. Like I've heard so many crazy stories and friends and like know people now that have healed themselves with just these modalities. Um, I always think it's never an either or. Like I also still take supplements to, for example, keep my vitamin D levels high. So it's always an and, like combining Western medicine, Eastern medicine, TCM and whatever, Reiki and meditation and nervous system regulation. It's always a combination, and it's about finding the combination that works for you. And even though I make it sound maybe easy, nervous system regulation especially gives you the tools so you can go through the hardship, you can go through pain, you can go through trauma, you can go through all these things and still come out on top. That's what this tool gives you. It's not like, oh, it's going to make it all go away and I'll only go snip and that's it. That's not how it works, but it gives you, you can process your emotions, you can have all emotions and be at total peace. Yeah, I think that's my final words.
I love that. Thank you so, so much. Actually, I just had a bonus question. Just for my own curiosity, why does strength training help? And ooh, just curious about that one.
Oh,
Oh, sorry. The muscle strength training. Why does that
yes.
help?
Yeah, so that's a great question actually, because I was never a gym person, or weight training was definitely not my jam. I was like, that just sounds boring.
Mhm,
I started weight training with a coach, with a trainer who was so much fun. Like she would always encourage me to push a little more, but not in a perfectionist way, or not in a, push through.
mhm,
But so one of my next diagnoses would have been insulin resistance. I was very close to that, and that would have been like my 33rd diagnosis.
oh my gosh.
But then my healing started, and I added in weight training once I had the energy, because I was fatigued and bedridden before. But once I had the energy, I started weight training, and not only did my insulin resistance completely reverse, like I'm nowhere near that anymore. I think like the HOMA index, I don't know if that means anything to you, but it was a 2.5, means you're close to insulin resistance.
Hmm.
And I went from 2.5 to 0.69 within 3 months. And that's thanks to weight training. So having more muscles um has it's given me physical strength, but also and more energy, definitely. So it's helped with energy, but
Hmm.
it's also given me a lot of mental strength, because it's like you think you cannot do another 2 reps, and then you just do another 3 reps. So like mentally, it was I think it taught me that yes, you can. It's given me so
Hmm.
much strength to say, I didn't think I could do this, but I know I can. And it's almost like changed the way I see myself. Um, yeah, so it's a little bit of both of those. It's a lot of physical energy.
Hmm.
Oh my God, I started to sleep really well, because if you're training your muscles, you're using a lot of energy that when you sit in front of your computers, you just don't
Hmm.
you don't turn it around. Your body produces stress hormones. Weight training actually reduces them. So yeah, that was gets
Amazing.
you out of chronic stress too. Mm.
Thank you so, so much for sharing. And thanks again. And yes, and thank you again for all your wisdom, all your vulnerability, all your sharing. Thank you. Let's
Thank
conclude
you
the
so much.
episode now.
Pleasure and an honor
Pleasure's
to
all
be
mine.
here.
Thank you.